When my grandma passed away, my parents told me, "Don't ask about the will. There's nothing left." I wanted to believe them, but something about the way they avoided my eyes, the way my uncle suddenly retired and bought a lake house, it gnawed at me. I wasn't supposed to dig deeper. But the truth, it had my name written all over it literally. And once I saw the original will, I realized just how far my own parents would go to erase me from the family legacy. If you've ever felt betrayed by the people you trust most, this story is for you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because sometimes the truth deserves to be heard. My name is Samantha Avery. I'm 38 years old, and I work as a legal researcher for a private law firm in upstate New York. I'm not flashy. I don't post much on social media. I don't throw my law degree around at family dinners. But I've always believed in one thing: the truth matters, even when it's inconvenient, even when it hurts. Growing up, I was the quiet one in the family, the one who stayed behind to help Grandma bake pies while my cousins ran wild in the backyard. She and I had a bond no one else seemed to understand. Maybe it's because we were both observers. We listened more than we spoke. We noticed the tension, the whispers, the way my Uncle Sam always seemed to borrow money without asking, and the way my parents enabled it. My parents, Patricia and Gerald, are what you'd call proper. Country club members, charitable on Sundays, but never the type to show too much affection, even to their only daughter. They raised me to be polite, restrained, and above all, not to question family business, especially when it came to money. So, when Grandma Helen passed away last fall at the age of 89, I was devastated, not just because she was gone, but because I never got to say goodbye. She died quietly in her sleep at the assisted living facility, and my parents handled all the arrangements. No funeral, no gathering. Just a cold call from my dad telling me, "It's done. There's no will." She didn't have anything to leave behind. Something about that didn't sit right with me. I remember Grandma talking about her will years ago over tea, her wrinkled hands cupping the mug. She used to say, "When I go, I want you to have the house. It's where your roots are, where you grew up." And I believed her. The house she referred to was a modest 2-story Victorian on Maple Ridge Lane. It wasn't worth millions, but it had heart. It was where I took my first steps, where she told me bedtime stories about strong women who stood up for themselves. To me, it was sacred. So when I drove by one day, weeks after her passing, and saw a moving truck out front, I pulled over. That's when I saw my Uncle Sam laughing, instructing movers to be careful with the antique cabinets. The same cabinets Grandma said she'd leave to me. I confronted him, stunned. "Uncle Sam, what are you doing?" He smiled a little too widely. "Oh, hey, kiddo. Just cleaning up the old place. Your dad said you knew I'm keeping it." "Keeping it," I repeated. He nodded. "I'm the legal owner now." She signed it all over to me before she passed. It was like ice water to the face. He was known in our family as the charmer, the one who always had a new business venture, a failed tech startup, a shady real estate flip. He had a history of borrowing and never repaying, of asking Grandma for loans that somehow never made it to paper. I tried to ask my parents later that night, desperate for clarity, but Mom just waved it off. "It's complicated, Samantha." She made her decision, but what about the will? There was no will, Dad said, his voice sharp. She had nothing to give. Don't start digging into things you don't understand. That's when I knew something was off. I had spent my entire career digging into legal documents. Wills, trust, power of attorney cases, this was literally my job. And yet they told me to stay out of it, to let it go, to trust them. But that wasn't love. That was control, and And if they thought I'd just walk away without knowing the truth, they didn't know me at all. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Uncle Sam's words in my mind. She signed it all over to me. And then my parents' voice, sharp and dismissive. She had nothing to give. But the memory of my grandmother's warm voice haunted me louder than all of them. I want you to have the house, Samantha. It's yours. So the next day, I did what any trained legal researcher would do. I dug. I started with the county registrar's office. I requested a copy of the property transfer for Grandma's house. It showed a quitclaim deed signed and notarized just 2 weeks before her death, transferring ownership to Uncle Sam. But the signature, it didn't look like hers. My hands trembled as I scanned the document. The date, the notary, the initials, it felt wrong. I called the nursing home to ask who had visited her that week. I expected red tape. But the nurse on duty remembered clearly. Your uncle was here twice. Said it was urgent family business. After that, she seemed confused. Kept asking where her will was. My heart dropped. I knew my grandma. She was sharp, clear-headed, even at 89. If she was asking about her will, it meant she hadn't changed it voluntarily. I called my parents again. This time, I didn't dance around it. Why did you lie to me? I asked. My mother sighed. Samantha, you're letting your job get into your head. I saw the deed, I said, voice shaking. And I think it's forged. There was a long pause on the line. Then, my father's voice, cold as steel. You need to stop. This isn't your place. You always thought she loved you more. Well, she didn't. You were just convenient. I felt the breath leave my body. Just convenient. My mother jumped in, her voice tight. You're making this harder for everyone. You've always been dramatic, Samantha. Always thought the world owed you something. No, I said, teeth clenched. I thought my family owed me honesty. Then came the words that sealed it. If you keep pushing, this don't bother coming to Christmas. You've made your choice. And just like that, I was exiled. Cast out. The daughter who asked too many questions. The greedy one. The one who dared to challenge the lie they had all agreed to uphold. For days, I felt numb. Not just from the betrayal, but from the loneliness. I looked at photos of me and Grandma laughing in the kitchen, decorating cookies, planting tulips. Was all of that convenient too? I didn't care about the money. What I couldn't stand was the feeling that her memory, her final wishes, had been hijacked, silenced, and that my parents, the people who raised me, were the ones doing it. The whispers from extended family started trickling in. Cousins texted things like, heard you're contesting Grandma's will. Yikes. Why are you making this a big deal? It's not a good look. Sam, even my godmother, someone I'd always trusted, left a voicemail. Maybe you're just upset because she didn't choose you. Let it go, honey. Let it go. That's what everyone wanted, for me to go away quietly. To pretend this didn't stink of fraud. To pretend I hadn't loved that woman with every fiber of my being. But here's the thing. I wasn't raised by my parents. I was raised by my grandmother. The woman who taught me to stand tall, speak the truth, and never let anyone silence what I know is right. So I stopped crying, and I started building my case. It's strange how quickly people will turn on you when you stop playing your role. The next week, I was uninvited from my cousin's baby shower. Not formally, of course, just a group text with everyone else but me. Then came the family group chat, where my name was suddenly missing from the birthday calendar and someone added a passive-aggressive message. Let's keep things peaceful this year. No unnecessary drama. Peaceful. I was watching my grandmother's memory be erased. and I was the villain. I tried reaching out to my mom again, hoping maybe this time she'd understand. She answered, her voice flat. "Mom," I said softly, "I just want to know why. Why would you cover this up?" There was a pause. Then she replied, almost like she was reciting it from a script. "Because your grandmother didn't know what she was doing at the end. She was confused. And frankly, you wouldn't have known what to do with that kind of responsibility." "You're too emotional, Samantha. Too emotional." That was always her favorite weapon, saying I was too sensitive, too idealistic, too dramatic. What she really meant was too inconvenient. "You could have told me the truth," I whispered. "We protected you," she said sharply. "You're welcome." That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at a shoebox full of old letters Grandma had sent me over the years. Her careful handwriting, her silly jokes, her recipes. And then I found a small card I didn't remember saving. On the back, she had written, "Never let anyone shame you for asking questions. You deserve answers." That was the moment I broke down. Not because I was angry, but because I finally admitted it to myself. They never saw me as part of the family. I was the outsider, the quiet one, the helper, the one who was useful until she started asking why. I tried to go back to work and focus on my caseload. But even there, I couldn't escape the weight of it. At lunch one day, my colleague Liz leaned across the table and asked, "Hey, everything okay? You've been really quiet lately." I wanted to lie. I wanted to say I was fine. Instead, I told her everything. The will, the forged documents, the threats, the guilt. She listened in silence, then leaned back and said, "Samantha, you can contest this. If you really believe that will was tampered with, you have to fight. For her. And for yourself." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. But even as I started collecting evidence, even as I began drafting a legal challenge, the emotional toll was heavy. One night, I got a call from Uncle Sam. I hadn't saved his number, but I knew the voice immediately. "Well, well," he drawled. "Looks like you're making a mess, sweetheart." "Don't call me that," I snapped. "You really think Grandma wanted you to have that house? Come on. You were just the quiet one she kept around, so she wouldn't feel lonely." My hands clenched around the phone. "You stole from her," I said. "And from me," he laughed. "You think anyone's going to believe that I'm the one on the deed?" "I have the paper. You have—" "What feelings?" Then he said it, that line that still rings in my ears. "You're just a bitter little girl who couldn't stand being left out." Click. I sat there shaking. Rage, sadness, shame, all mixed into one. I didn't tell anyone about that call. Not my friends, not even Liz. Because deep down, a part of me started wondering, what if they were right? What if I was being dramatic? What if I was just clinging to a memory of a woman who wasn't even thinking of me when she died? But the doubt didn't last, because a few days later, I found something that changed everything. A folder tucked in one of Grandma's recipe books. Inside, a yellowed envelope addressed to me, and a real copy of her will, the date 6 months before her death. The witness signatures, all valid. The notary, stamp official. And in black ink, bold as day, Helen Marie Avery, leave my home and all remaining assets to my granddaughter Samantha Leigh Avery, who has always seen me with love, not agenda. I read it 3 times. Then I cried. Then I got mad. And then I started preparing for war. I stared at the copy of Grandma's will for what felt like hours. My fingers trembled as I held the thick paper, the corners slightly worn like it had been read and reread many times. It was real. It was legal. It was mine. And still, they had tried to bury it. My parents, my uncle, my whole family, they decided that I didn't matter, that I could be erased, that Grandma's final wishes could be overwritten like I was nothing more than a footnote in their narrative. The grief hit me all over again, not just for her, but for the version of my life I thought was real, the one where family meant loyalty, where love meant protection, where truth had value. All of that was gone now. I scanned the rest of the folder. Inside was a note handwritten dated just months before Grandma passed Samantha. If they try to take what I left for you, don't be afraid. You know how to fight. And if you feel alone, remember I raised you to stand your ground. With all my love, Grandma. My chest ached so deeply I thought I might collapse, but I couldn't, because I wasn't just mourning anymore, I was burning. Burning with a cold, focused rage. The next day, I took the documents to work and asked Liz to help me scan and verify everything. We brought in another senior attorney, Marcus, a probate expert, who had seen his fair share of family betrayals. He read through everything, looked up, and simply said, "This is forgery, and you have a case." That should have felt like relief, like validation. But the storm was only just beginning. Once I filed the challenge in probate court, it was like I'd declared war. Within 48 hours, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. I hadn't seen them in months. My mother stood stiffly in her beige trench coat, her hair pulled tight, her face unreadable. My father looked tired, but not sorry. "We need to talk," my mother said. As soon as I opened the door, I let them in. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see if there was still anything human left in them. "You've embarrassed the entire family," she said, arms crossed. "Dragging this through the courts. For what? An old house and a savings account. It's not about the money," I said calmly. "It's about the fact that you lied. You let him steal from her, from me." My father scoffed. "Your grandmother was confused. You're reading too much into this." "I have a notarized will," I said, setting it on the table between us. "Dated, signed, witnessed, and you knew about it." My mother's eyes narrowed. "You found it then." The admission stunned me. "So you did know," I whispered. "You let him change it." She looked away, jaw clenched. "Your uncle needed the house. He has children. You're alone." That cut deep. "You mean I'm disposable?" I said, my voice breaking. There was a long silence. My father shifted uncomfortably, then said, "Drop the case, Samantha. If you go through with this, you'll lose us forever." I stared at him. My father. The man who taught me how to ride a bike, who read me stories as a child. But now, all I saw was someone who chose convenience over conscience. "I already lost you," I whispered, "the day you lied to me." They left without another word, and just like that, I was orphaned by the living. The days that followed were brutal. The court process was slow, grueling. I had to recount every detail, every interaction, every memory, even the good ones, and lay them bare for strangers to judge. Some nights, I'd cry into my pillow until I was hoarse. Other nights, I'd lie awake with my fists clenched, replaying every word Uncle Sam had said to me. "You were just the quiet one she kept around." It echoed like a taunt. Friends started to distance themselves too. A few sent polite texts. "Hope everything's okay." But no one really asked how I was. No one wanted to be involved in family drama. I was alone, except for Grandma. Her voice, soft, stubborn, defiant, stayed with me. I'd hear it when I was brushing my hair. "Stand your ground, sweetheart." Or when I walked into the courtroom for the first hearing, head high, shoulders back. "You've got truth on your side." She was right. I had truth. And now I had the law. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Or maybe it wasn't the room. Maybe it was the way my uncle wouldn't look at me. The way my parents sat stiffly behind him, arms crossed, eyes empty. They came prepared. Uncle Sam had hired a smooth-talking attorney, someone who kept referring to me as the disgruntled granddaughter who was emotionally unstable and misinterpreting a grieving woman's intentions. But I came with something more powerful proof. The original will, the notarized statements. The folder in Grandma's handwriting with her signature matching her medical records verified by a forensic handwriting expert we hired just days before trial. And then came the part that turned everything. My attorney, Marcus, called the notary listed on the forged deed. She was a soft-spoken woman in her 60s, but when she took the stand, her words hit like thunder. "I never notarized that deed," she said firmly. "That's not my stamp. That's not my signature." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The judge narrowed his eyes. "Are you saying the document was forged?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Completely." From the corner of my eye, I saw Uncle Sam shift uncomfortably in his seat. My mother leaned forward, whispering something to my father. Their expressions changed, not to concern, but to fear. Next, Marcus presented the logs from the nursing home records of my uncle's unmonitored visits in the final days before Grandma's death. Coupled with her sudden confusion, her questions about a will that seemed to vanish, and medical reports showing she had no mental decline, the pattern was clear. They hadn't just manipulated her, they'd tried to erase her, and me. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was measured but resolute. "This court finds that the will presented by Ms. Avery is valid and legally binding. The quitclaim deed submitted by Mr. Samuel Avery is fraudulent and hereby voided. All assets listed in the original will shall be returned to the rightful heir, Samantha Avery." I sat frozen. Not from shock, but from release. Like every wound had found its closure in a single moment. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. Because for the first time since Grandma passed, I felt her peace wrap around me like a blanket. Uncle Sam stormed out before the ruling was fully read. My parents followed heads down their exit louder than any words they could have said. They never looked back at me, but it didn't matter. Because for once, I wasn't the one being erased. 2 months later, I hosted a small gathering at Grandma's house. The one I had fought for. The one they said I didn't deserve. I kept it simple. Tea in real china cups. Her lemon bars made from her handwritten recipe. Fresh tulips in the window. It wasn't about celebrating victory. It was about honoring truth. I invited only a handful of people, Liz Marcus, a couple neighbors who used to garden with Grandma. No one came for the drama. They came for the memory. Toward the end of the evening, one of my cousins, the only one who hadn't cut me off, approached me nervously holding a plate. I just wanted to say, I read the ruling. I'm sorry for what they did and for not speaking up. I nodded. Thank you. He looked around the house, eyes soft. She loved you. Everyone knew that. They just didn't want it to be true. I didn't respond, not because I didn't have words, but because sometimes silence says more than confrontation ever could. Weeks later, I stood in front of the fireplace, holding the final piece of this journey in my hands. Grandma's will. I had it framed, just as it was, no edits, no additions. I hung it on the wall, above the mantel, next to a photo of the two of us when I was 5, covered in flour and laughter. It wasn't about pride. It was about memory, about preserving her voice when others had tried to steal it. And as I looked around the room at the hardwood floors, she polished herself the curtains she sewed by hand, I realized something deeper. They didn't just try to take a house. They tried to take my place in her life, but they failed. Because what Grandma left me wasn't just a home or a bank account. She left me courage, conviction, and a voice that couldn't be silenced no matter how many lies they told. Spring came late that year. The air was still crisp. When I stood beneath the cherry blossom tree in Grandma's front yard, the one she planted the year I was born. Its petals fluttered in the breeze, soft and pink, like a quiet celebration of everything we'd fought for. The house was officially mine now. But more than that, I was finally free. Not from grief. That still came in waves. But from the silence, from the shame they tried to pin on me, from the fear of being too much, too emotional, too inconvenient. I spent the following weeks fixing up the house, not to flip it or show it off, but to honor it. I repainted her kitchen in pale yellow, the color she always said made the sunlight taste sweeter. I hung wind chimes by the window, and every Sunday I baked her lemon bars just for me. I never heard from my parents again. Not a card, not a call. And you know what, I didn't need one, because healing didn't mean stitching things back together. It meant letting go of what was never mine to carry in the first place. On what would have been Grandma's 90th birthday, I invited a few friends over for tea. Before we ate, I stood in front of the fireplace and read a single line from the original will, the one they tried to erase, to the one who saw me with truth, not expectation. I leave my home, my heart, and my gratitude. I looked up, my voice steady. She didn't choose me instead of them. She chose me because I never asked her to be anyone but herself. And for the first time, I finally understood why she left everything to me.